I was up till 2:30 last night drinking at the bar. So, Mr. Greg Whitstock, everybody.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, I was up till 2:30 last night with a handful of you in here. Yeah, it was a fun night. So yeah, I've been having a great time here. So I want to thank Mark and Becky for inviting me out. This is my first year at Pondeminium, so honored to be here as usual, you know, in front of such a great group of people. Hanging out last night, you know, it's that type of stuff. We can do it all day long. You know, I mean, it's just such a fun group, you know, so many different stories, so many different lives that we all have, but we all have that one common denominator, our love for water, our passion for nature. All these different things are kind of coming together, you know, right here. You know, when Greg was talking yesterday, I didn't even put it all together when he was actually saying this is one of the best events in the entire industry. I'm not even thinking about it. I've never been here before. I've heard lots of stories, but I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like, this really is. I mean, this is the best of the best right here. I mean, the Northeast, I have a huge heart for the Northeast. I mean, I love coming out, so much fun. And again, the passion, the energy, and all this stuff that's happening right here is unbelievable. You know, I mean, I could just sit here all day long and actually thinking about that type of stuff. When I was asked to speak here, I'm like, my gosh, you know, trying to think of all the different people that are going to be here. I'm like, what am I going to say that they haven't heard before? I don't even know. I mean, it's such a diverse group. We have some people that have never been here before, that are pretty, you know, brand new to the industry. We have others that, you know, veterans that have been around for a decade or more. So we have a really, really unique mixture of people. So I'm trying to put together, I'm like, gosh, what could I talk about, and coming up with all these things. And during Pondemonium, who here has been to Pondemonium before? Most of you. So you've heard me speak. So during Pondemonium, I am always very well written. You know, I have exactly what I'm going to talk about in my head. You know, I have a good flow of everything. I'm a presenter, so I have information. I have this content. I take everybody through the story, and I leave maybe a minute for a question and answer, just because I have so much stuff. You know, Greg's always yelling at me, and he's pulling me off the stage. I'm like, oh, just one more minute, because there's so much information. So today, I am doing something outside of my comfort zone. I'm normally very well prepared. Not to say that I'm not prepared right now, but I'm going to have just a question and answer session, because I always get inundated with all these questions and I never have time to answer them all. I don't have time to walk around and, you know, and see everybody. So how does that sound? Does that sound like it'll be okay? I mean, we got some good stuff. Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. I do want to start out, and I apologize because I was awake until 2:30 in the morning last night and the night before. I didn't make any of the workout sessions. But I was going to show you guys, I've had some people, Greg has been talking me up about a certain type of push-up that I do. So, who here is a good push-up person? And does anybody want to try doing? All you got to do is one. Could you do one push-up? Who wants to come up and try one of my push-ups?
Go ahead, Jack.
Just one push-up. Now, I'm going to have to take off my shoes. If everybody wants to stand up, you're going to have to look at it, because obviously we're going to have to be on the ground.
You might want to get up and watch.
I hope I don't break the mics, but. So you say, do I have enough? I might have to do it on the, I might have to, you don't have to, but I prefer it. I prefer it. And I hope I can do it. I don't do it on a regular basis, but, so, yeah, but when I do, exactly. So, I came up with this, just screwing around with the kids. You know, I'm always pushing them for challenges and everything. You know, I'm a big kid, you know, kind of like Greg. I love playing with my kids and all their buddies and stuff. I have 2 boys. When they come over, you know, there's wrestling matches, you know, we're climbing trees, doing all this goofy stuff. It's what I enjoy. Some of my oldest son's buddies are football players. They're great on track. So I'm always trying to challenge them, not as much as Greg, but I always try to outdo them with something. I'm like, I can come up with some stuff that these guys can't do. So these are some kids that are in pretty good shape. But what I came up with is a traditional push-up. All right, so you start down. I like to do it on my knuckles, but that's because I have bad wrists from building ponds all the time. But you go down, I'm gonna have to do it over here. Hold on. I don't have. This is too sticky. Hold on.
Do it in slow motion.
I'll do it in slow motion. So you come down. You got to be flexible. You got to be quick. I'm sticking. I'm not as flexible this morning. I normally will stick that. I didn't. I normally could flip that bottom one under. See what you got. I'm normally a little more flexible. I do have to. So, so you could start on your back if you want. Lay down, up. Up, push up, kick your legs back under you. It's all the flexibility of the training. Yeah, there you go. Now you got to kick up, pop up, kick your legs out. That's the key. That's the little killer right there. We got another taker. Nice. The pop up. Ah, there it is. That's good. I didn't stretch this morning. Usually a little bit more limber. But you do 10 or 15 of those, and you're done.
Until tomorrow.
Yeah, no. That's fun stuff. Fun stuff. Yeah, I do have other little weird workout things that I do, but we won't go into all of them. But it is fun stuff. So, now that that's out of the way, so I just want to have a question and answer. I've been, walking around and talking to everybody. Actually, I do have a fun project that I'm working on right now. I was just telling Mike and Andrew over at breakfast something that I've never seen before. So I've been in the industry for 22 years, designed and built 1,000+ projects all over the world. But I, for the first time, came into a situation brand new, and I'm like, wow, this is going to be a cool project. So I'll give you a little bit of background on it. So I'm working with this architect, company that I've done a bunch of work with over many, many years. Great reputation. They're starting to call me in now during the design process, which is great. So they're taking all of our information and they're loading it into their computers so they could just cut and paste all of our products in there, which is exactly what we want to do. So with this one, he's like, I get the call from Jeff and he's like, Ed, I got this new project. And I'm like, oh, you need a little bit of help? He's like, yep, design phase right now. Big company out of Boston has worked with us. They put together this master plan for a new hospital. I'm like, all right, well, that sounds cool. I'm like, well, what do you got? What do you need help with? He's like, well, we got about 6 acres of ponds. All right, 6 acres. It's like we got an 1.5 acre upper pond, 4.5 acre lower pond. And then he's like, we have 900 foot of stream and waterfall in between. 12-foot grade change. I'm like, all right, that sounds pretty cool. 900-foot stream, 12-foot waterfall. This will be a real cool project. So he's like, you know what, come on out. We're going to sit down and go over the designs. He's like, I want you to kind of poke holes in it. It's got to work flawlessly. He's like, they don't have any filters. Little concern about circulation. He's like, I need you to look at this thing. I'm like, I'd love to. He's like, I have a design fee. He's like, oh, I get it. And this is a guy I've worked with tons before. We have a good history together, so I know he's going to use us. But I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I don't know, $500, whatever it's going to be. I'll come on out for the day. So I get to his office. I'm thinking 900-foot stream, waterfall, this stuff. I get there. I'm looking at the drawing. He's got like this big, schematic up, and he's got this beautiful hospital in the background. In the foreground, I see the waterfall. It is not 900-foot long stream. The waterfall, 900 feet wide. 900 foot wide waterfall. And I'm like, that's a first. I have never, ever seen a 900 foot wide waterfall. I'm like, holy cow. I'm like, seriously? It's 12 foot tall wall of water. It's this big arc radius. I'm like, whoa. I'm like, are you serious? He's like, I know. He's like, that's why you're here. He's like, I don't know how the hell to make this thing work. He's like, we got to figure this in. He's like, figure out with me how we can make this thing function. I'm like, geez. I'm like, all right. So we talked for an hour. Actually, on the way to Cabo, I had to do a write-up. So on the plane to Cabo, normally I'm sleeping. And I'm like, oh, I got to get this done. If I get to Cabo, I guarantee I won't get it done when I'm there. So I'm like, I'll sit awake in the plane, come up with my write-up. So I did multiple page write-up. And he's like, I need you to figure out and make this thing function. So we have, gosh, half plus acre of wetland filters for it, over $800,000 in wetlands going all the way around. They had no, despite having this massive waterfall, they had bad circulation. Big pond on the bottom, upper pond, very similar to, I mean, it's just like an 11 by 16, honestly, with a waterfall in between, just big. The pumps are bigger, the pipes are bigger. The pipes are 18-inch pipes, and there's 10 of them. You know, massive, massive pipes and flow rates and all this stuff. Evaporation. So I'm thinking exactly like I think with a small pond, exactly. I'm like, you're going to lose water. He's like, well, it's 6 acres of ponds. You know, what's a little, half of an inch of water going to do? I'm like, do they have a well to refill it? He's like, no, it's all runoff. I'm like, let me do some numbers on it. So my numbers, I came back, I'm like, you're going to lose 30,000 gallons every 3 days in evaporation. And that's because you got a 900 foot wide waterfall. 30,000 gallons, over several acres is not much, but it comes out to a couple inches a week. Like a couple inches of water loss, I mean, you're looking at hundreds of thousands of gallons of water a week. You have no way to refill it. He's like, that's great information. Give me all this stuff. I'm like, filtration. You're investing millions and millions and millions of dollars into this water feature. It's going to be right at the base of this spectacular, state-of-the-art, brand new hospital facility. I'm like, this water's got to be pristine. He's like, absolutely. He's like, it totally has to be pristine. I said, right now, the way it's designed, you're going to have all types of problems. So what they had, lower pond, upper pond, they had the waterfall wall, they had like a distribution trough, almost like one of our spillways. I mean, it's exactly what it is, just huge. It's 900 foot long and it's deep, but water's coming into the bottom of it. I'm like, that's going to become a huge sediment trap. You have no way to clean it out. There's no sump. He's like, yep, no sump. I'm like, all your pumps are on the very bottom of the pond. They're going to suck all the runoff coming in. All that sediment's going to be discharged into this trough, and this is going to be a cesspool of garbage up here. Yeah, we don't want that. I'm like, no. So the other thing, the pond, 1.5 acre upper pool, this distribution trough is right on the edge of the waterfall. I'm like, you're not going to get any circulation up against the terrace. There's a big terrace and a big walkway going along the back side of this upper pond. I'm like, your circulation sucks. I said, you're going to have algae blooms, you're going to have stuff that's happening in there. We need discharging water. Think of jets. But again, just on a bigger scale. When you have a dead zone in a little 11 by 16 pond, it's not that big. But when you're talking about 900 foot wide waterfalls and the pond is 700 feet from one end to the other, these little dead zones add up. I mean, it's what we did over at McCannon Farm. It's what we did over at the Lincoln Park Zoo. It's these same things. It's what we do every day on a tiny little scale, just blown out. And I keep going back and forth with this stuff. But it is very similar philosophically. Now, do I recommend people going out and doing these things? I don't even know if I want to touch it. You know, Greg hasn't even heard about all this stuff, but
I heard about it on the plane.
On the plane.
My only question is,
yes.
did you charge for your design?
I did, yeah, $500. I got $500 for a design on this thing. Absolutely. And on top of that, so in the drawing, it's going to be spec'd out with, I forget how many, thousands of aqua blocks, snorkels, centipedes, 3-inch pipe, all of this stuff for wetland filtration. So our name is going to be on that. If we get the project or not, somebody is going to get it, and somebody's going to ask us for how to figure out how to put this thing together. So certified contractors, I mean, this is the type of stuff that I try to work on. I'm trying to get us specified into different things. And these are obviously, it comes with working with people. So Hitchcock Designs, very, very, very well-known design firm. I mean, they do work all over the country. So they specialize in the healthcare industry. I've done the healthcare show with them for several years now. So they're a huge proponent of Aquascape. We actually we talked to them about doing one of our Pond Star shows with them. So Jeff, he's one of the principals over at the architecture firm. He's like, Ed, I want to get on one of these shows. I'm like, absolutely. I'm like, how about a healing garden? You got a bunch of stuff. He's like, yeah, let's make it happen. Let's make it happen. So he's constantly throwing ideas at me. He understands the value. He's like, we have to get all this information out. He's like, we still have to do all these promotions, and they do a fantastic, fantastic job of promoting us. They put us in front of some great people. I've done a lot of municipal work for them. We did a project with him, a interactive stream for kids last summer. $75,000 project, stream and waterfall, basin down on the bottom, and just really cool stuff. But back to my other big waterfall story. So I figured out evaporation for them. They got these massive, massive pumps. They're sitting down on the bottom. I'm like, well, I don't know if I'd put them all the way on the bottom. Maybe I'd set the intakes up a little bit higher so you're not sucking in all the sediments from the bottom and from the runoff and everything coming in there. You definitely have to have a way to clean out that big trough system to get sediments out of there. Let's discharge some of the water right up against the terrace. Let's take a portion of that water and bring it all the way around the backside of the pond into a wetland filter system to create a series of jets and push debris and stuff all the way to the middle. I'm like, maybe we should come up with a skimmer system on this, so we can capture debris. I said, if you're investing this type of money into it, a pond of that scale, so here's what's interesting, a pond of that scale is going to probably look good for several years with us doing nothing. And it's just because there's 6 million gallons of water in it. So it's a lot of water inside of it. So just because of that huge buffering capacity, it'll look good. It'll look fine. They won't notice anything. But when they're designing stuff, they're thinking 100 years from now. So they're like, we want this thing to be bomb-proof. We want it to function year in, year out, flawlessly. I said, okay, well, one of the other things you have to think about, electrical costs, obviously. I'm like, we got 10, 50 horsepower pumps as of right now. So the architecture firm, and I think their numbers are off. I think we have to increase that higher. So the architecture firm said, and this, again, I'm kind of blown away by it. They said, we want 3 inches of water going over the waterfall. That's a thick volume. I mean, for the builders in here, you know what it's like just to get that extra ½ inch, that thickness of water. I mean, I'm like, your numbers are off, and I'm like, I don't even understand why. It'll probably look spectacular adding about between 1.5 inches and 2 inches. So they have 3.3 million gallons an hour of flow rate. So 3.3 million gallons per hour of flow rate. I'm like, holy cow. And I'm like, you're off. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, it should be more like 7 million gallons an hour. You need about 7,000 gallons per hour per foot to get that type of thickness. You need some serious, serious pumping power. And I said, with that is going to become your electrical costs. I said, are these pumps going to run all the time? And they're like, yeah, we don't know. And he's like, we'd like to shut them down because of electrical costs. I'm like, well, do you have a VFD, which is a variable frequency drive? It's very similar to our AquaSurge pumps. A little remote, we're going to go out there and turn the pumps off and on, click them off and on. Yeah, just increase the flow a little bit, bring it up and down. But that's basically what a VFD is. It changes the voltage and the hertz going to the pump motor, and you could increase or decrease the speed. So with that, I told them, I'm like, you know what? If you have a 50 horsepower pump and it goes on, it goes from 0 to 100% instantaneously. I mean, to have that much torque and that much push, I said, it's going to be a blast of water flying down that piping, and it's going to come and it's going to slam into those elbows like a freight train. I said, you're going to have to do thrust blocking, and you're going to have specialized fittings on those elbows. You'll blast them apart with that type of flow rate. He's like, yeah, I didn't even think about that stuff. I'm like, just the weight of water, 18-inch pipe. I mean, that's just a charge of water going down this thing. So I'm like, a variable frequency, it'll start out at about 25%. So the pump will turn on, and it'll slowly ramp up over whatever period you want. If you want it to go from 0 to 100% in 5 minutes, that's what it takes, but you slowly ramp it up. But that type of kick for that many pumps, I mean, you're going to see the lights dim in that whole community. It's going to, I mean, that's some serious, serious horsepower. I'm like, geez, this is just insane. He's like, absolutely. I'm like, it's an expensive feature, but it's all relative. Like, the pumps alone are going to be probably $500,000. I mean, it's at a whole different scale. I'm like, gosh, but you get your head around it, but it's not overwhelming to me because I pick it apart. I'm like, it's a pump. We're moving water from point A to point B. we're still filtering it. We still have to have the biological filter. We still have to make sure there's no dead zones. They had no aquatic plants. I'm like, let's get some aquatic plants in here. They want to make it a garden space. They have walking trails and everything going around it. It's the same exact thing we do, but you just have to think about it a little bit differently and just pick it apart and methodically go through it. And I'm like, yeah, this is easy. So this is easy stuff. The fun stuff about this, so this was kind of so all these other architects are coming in and I'm talking and I'm doing my thing and all this stuff. And these guys are all like, yeah, who the heck is this guy? You know, we don't know who Ed is. And then the principal stands up. He's like, we're in front of a movie star here. And all the guys are like, huh? He's like, yeah, he's on a TV show with Greg and Brian and the other guys. He's like, they have a TV show on Nat Geo Wild. And just like that, we have credibility. Now all of a sudden these architects are, oh, really? I'm like, yeah, we've traveled all around the country. I've designed and built X amount of water features, and just start going through credentials. He's like, yeah, send me your bio because I want to get that to the head of the hospital. So I want to get this information to the head people so they know we're not just coming up with stuff to add on to this. I'm like, everything I'm adding here, I'm very conscious of your dollar, of course, like I always am. I want to give you the greatest value. But here's who I am, here's what we do, here's our long list of credentials. Can we handle this? Is it a bigger system than I've ever built before? Absolutely. Never done a 900-foot wide waterfall. My record is a 110-foot wide waterfall. So I do have a 110-foot wide waterfall with 3,000 gallons plus gallons per minute flowing over it. But that's like this versus this. It's just really cool stuff. So thinking of how all this stuff is going to work together. When is this project going to happen? I don't have a clue. I'm meeting with them next Wednesday. So he's like, Ed, we just got to finalize stuff. I've sent your credentials. I've sent your write-up, over to the hospital. Let's meet one more time so we could finalize all these things. You can answer all of their questions directly from the horse's mouth because we were going back and forth with emails and everything. And he's like, yeah, they're asking me questions I can't answer, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no problem. I said, let's try to make this thing happen. So it's exciting stuff. It's fun things, and what I do with Aquascape, again, we have Brian and the construction crew. We have myself. We have Greg. We're doing Aquascape Pond Stars. We're tackling projects all over the place. My role with Aquascape has changed over the years. I was in charge of local construction just like Brian is right now, but we still have to do R&D. We still have to get out there. We still are looking for those high-profile projects. We're still trying to push the envelope on things. And that's because we're the manufacturer. We have to come up and we have to be looking at these things a little bit differently than everybody else and say, yeah, you know what? This could be a viable system. The healthcare industry, I want to get this project for one reason and one reason alone. That picture is going to be plastered all over every healthcare show throughout the world. Every single one. And that was the number one thing that the architecture firm said out of Boston. He said, all I care about is my final picture. Very similar to Greg. He's like, all I want is that money shot. He's like, then I could take that stuff, we have our name on it, and we can go out there to the rest of the industry. So it's all about creating that vision, coming up with that final picture in your head, and then how you're going to utilize it. So the weird thing about this is, and this is kind of the goofy part about this pond and waterfall.
Great job of taking questions.
Yeah, I know. So, thank you. So, the goofy part about this entire project. So all right, so I'll ask the group, so I'll try to incorporate everybody. So when you're designing a water feature, do you have the waterfall facing the home or facing the neighbor's home? Where would you have it? Your home. Facing your home, right? So this 900-foot wide waterfall is facing you. Where I'm standing is the hospital. The terrace is here. The lower pond is on the bottom. The parking lot is behind the hospital. You don't see the waterfall from inside the hospital, when you drive up to the hospital, from anything. And I'm like, that's weird. I'm like, something's wrong with that. But it went back to that architect saying, all I care about is that final picture. I want a picture of this massive wall of water, and then this hospital is going to be floating on top of it. It's like, that's the only thing I want. So they're investing millions and millions of dollars, let alone thousands of dollars in electrical costs every month just for that one thing. Again, for a picture. Now, is it going to gain national publicity? I think so. 900-foot wide waterfall? I've never seen anything like that built anywhere. Las Vegas, Dubai, anywhere. I mean, that's insane. That's just insane stuff. The neat thing about it, again, we've been trying to get into the healthcare industry. Healthcare industry right now, still booming. It continues to skyrocket. Putting in ponds that, and again, not massive ones like this. We have some ones, right down the street from us that are basically pondless waterfalls, right outside of a courtyard. So smaller little settings, that's actually where most of the healthcare people want them. They want the money shot. I mean, don't get me wrong. They want to have that big wow factor. But where it's at, they're creating these little healing gardens. These little healing gardens are just small courtyards that are just on these little courtyards and offshoots of the main hospital, where only a handful of people will go outside after a stressful day of whatever it happens to be in the hospital. A couple little benches, beautiful background of plantings, nice patio, and a waterfall. That's where it's at. But it's taking that type of information, gathering data on it, and then taking that type of stuff and going into people's backyards. Healing gardens, I don't know if who here saw the episode that we did where we did a healing garden for a cancer survivor patient. That's powerful stuff. Super, super powerful. Every person in this room needs a healing garden. I mean, when we talk about marketing our services, what we have literally is gold for people. I mean, it's just unbelievable to create that escape for somebody where they can get away from their stresses of their lives. I mean, again, just sitting around and talking with everybody here over the days, we all have all these crazy stories in our lives, and we all have all this stuff happen around us. This is the real world. This is the real world. This is what we need to get in front of people and say, this is what we have to offer to you. But it has to start somewhere. So what's exciting about this stuff for me, you start grand, massive stuff, and then it starts to trickle down. It starts to funnel down. I shouldn't say trickle down like this. It's actually going to go like that. It's going to go wider and wider. But it's instead of one big feature, it's going to be thousands and thousands of little ones, and backyards and hospitals and wellness centers and connecting people with nature. I mean, all this stuff, it's just unbelievable. It's just, we are in such an incredible place, for everybody in this room. But you really have to, listen to Steve, listen to Doug and Judy. I mean, all these things that you're taking away from here, I mean, all you have to do is take one little piece and better understand these things, and it's going to turn you into a better salesman. And you are making an impact in people's lives. I mean, I truly feel when I go out, I'm making an impact on somebody. That's my goal. My goal is obviously to sell stuff. We're in business to make money. My goal is to make an impact on somebody. In the process, I'm going to sell them something. So what is that connection? Connecting people with nature, connecting kids with nature, ponds for kids, healing gardens, taking away the stresses for people, wounded warrior projects. Where's Ed Drohan at? Wounded warrior projects. All of this stuff. It's just a matter of getting it out there. This is why we're doing Aquascape Pond Stars. This is why we need to keep that momentum going. We have some great stuff. Greg and I are being asked to speak at the Dwell conference over in Los Angeles in May. So the Dwell conference, I mean, it's a great magazine, one of my favorite magazines, cutting edge design, sustainable designs, environmental living. I mean, the demographic of the people that read that magazine is way up here. I mean, this is pretty high income people. A couple $100,000 family income coming in. So these people, again, might not be going grand, but they're going quality. They're going with quality designs. So Greg and I were invited out there because of Pond Stars. They're like, heck yeah, man, Nat Geo Wild, instant credibility. We want you to come to our conference. It was the smaller conference in New York City. They only had a few thousand people there. We had a captive audience, and all of a sudden, the promoter, the one that was doing everything for Dwell, she heard feedback from everybody. She actually interviewed us, and she heard feedback from everybody saying, we want more of these guys. And that's because water, when you're talking about design, right now they're talking about all these beautiful designs, but they're glossing over the landscape part. They talk about water-wise gardening, and they'll show little pictures of fountains, but it's not a focus. So when we came in there, we're focusing on the water, and everything else revolves around it. So we're the opposite. So it just struck a chord with people. Everybody's like, we want more of it. Started asking us questions, and these are top designers from around the world. So this Dwell conference, it's out in Los Angeles, the end of May. We're going to have, they get 30,000+ visitors are going to come out for this 2-day conference. 50% of them are architects, engineers, and designers. So we have 15,000 people that are going to be specifying projects. This is where we need to be living. I mean, we're totally looking forward to it. I mean, we're going to go out there, we'll blow them away. I mean, we'll have our presentation. They're going to do a great job of promoting us. They're totally looking forward to it. I just got interviewed by the magazine 2 days ago. On Monday or Tuesday of this week, I was interviewed by the magazine. That article will run prior to us doing the show. So it's going to continue for us to build that momentum. So now we're going to have this group of people coming together. We're going to promote our website. We're going to promote the Pond Stars. We're going to promote all these different things we're doing. We're going to promote our new CAD detail program. So CAD details is we have right now, we're going to continue to build on it, but we have 50 architectural drawings that we've created. We can give those to architects and designers. They could basically drag and drop this stuff into designs. It's Aquascape name all over it. Hire a certified Aquascape contractor, look for a certified Aquascape contractor to have this system installed. So this is the type of promotion that we're doing from all angles. We want to promote to the end user, to the consumer. We want to promote to the municipality. We want to promote to the hospitals, the architects, the designers. Just hit it from as many angles as possible, just because that's what we have to do. Am I right? I mean, it's not one thing that's going to grow your business. It's all these things. It's social media, and it's home shows, and it's doing the display ponds. It's all these things cumulatively build your business. So it's part of your overall business strategy. But for us as the manufacturer, we want to create that. We want to create the hype. We want to create all this stuff. And right now we have a great platform to go off of, which I'm super, super, super excited about. Because again, as Greg said yesterday, National Geographic, unfortunately, they did pass on our show, but the executives loved us. They were like, wow, you guys are just doing some cool stuff. Actually, Janet Vissering, I know Steve, you met her. I don't know if she's going to do a pond with you or not, but the executives love what we do. They love the message, but unfortunately, they rebranding their company. I shouldn't say rebranding it. They went back to their roots of the lions and tigers and bears and the Shark Weeks and all that stuff. So unfortunately, we got pushed out of it. We were what was called a process show. So a process show is a construction process. We show a start, a middle, and a finish of a project, and that's it. That's the entire show. They had other shows similar to ours on Nat Geo Wild. There's one, that was building cabins and all this stuff. They eliminated all of those. So they just said, you know what, we have to go back to our roots. We're going to stick with animals. Totally respect that. But what it did is it gave us that instant credibility, because National Geographic, like Disney World and Coca-Cola, there's only a few names out there, literally in the entire world, that are known throughout the world. National Geographic, that magazine, is an icon. I mean, people know it, people respect it, and it's because they've built that credibility over the many, many years. So when somebody reads something in National Geographic, you know that information is correct, because they have a team of people working inside their offices. They have teams of people that are double checking all the information to make sure that the information that they're posting is correct. So for us to work with that organization, it was an honor. I mean, National Geographic, I've been a fan since I was a little kid. I mean, that would be like Greg being on Sports Illustrated, on the cover of Sports Illustrated. So for me, it's National Geographic. I mean, it's just cool stuff. But what I thought was really neat was it took about our third episode in. I was the kind of the point person for Nat Geo, and they would call me with questions. They said, Ed, in this episode, Greg is saying this, or Brian is saying that, and Chris is saying this, you said this. Where's the data? Where's the information? Is this information correct? From our research, we're finding different stuff. We're finding out that the koi pond needs to be 6 feet deep. I'm like, it doesn't need to be 6 feet deep. But they're double checking the information. They're like, well, geez, all the information that we read on the website, when we look up koi, says it's got to be 6 feet deep. I'm like, it doesn't have to be 6 feet deep. I could show you 1,000 ponds tomorrow if you want to go see 1,000 ponds in Chicago or Edmonton, Canada, a zone 3 or whatever it is. It's Edmonton, Canada, brutal, 2 feet deep. Healthy, happy koi. We have a different philosophy. We're setting up an ecosystem. So I had to do the job of educating the educators. And it's because it was different stuff. It was outside of their normal realm of understanding. So after answering all these questions, episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, every time they checked it out, they said, yep, we agree with you, we agree with you, we agree with you. They're like, Ed, from now on, whatever you guys say is good. It's good. All the information you've given back to us, we have no reason to question it anymore. I hope you're not mad, but this is our job, is to question it, to make sure it's the best information available. But they're like, you guys, Aquascape, you're the leader in the industry. We will not question it. That's like, bam. I mean, that's huge. That is just such a huge statement. I mean, I was just grinning from ear to ear reading that email. I'm like, man, this is awesome. It's like we're finally we're breaking down these barriers piece by piece, but it takes time. It takes doing some of these crazy projects. It takes doing all this different stuff. Do I expect people in here to do it? Heck no. That stuff is for us. Let us do that stuff. Let us create the content. Let us create the information. Let us create all these different pieces. We'll then give the information out to you on how we could all work together in that same direction. So it's really, really, really cool stuff.
The most important message that I want you to hear. Don't be tackling these jobs.
Yeah, it's scary. Well, and honestly, you know, when you're talking about $500,000 in pumps, $800,000+ in wetland filters, I mean, multi-million-dollar projects. Honestly, they wouldn't hire anybody in this room, and it's not because you don't have the skills. You don't have the size of your company is not in scale with the project. Does that make sense? You know, so they're going to look. I mean, I don't know if anybody in here has done commercial work, but they will actually ask for what's your yearly, what's your sales? What type of gross dollars do you do? Because they want to know. They're like, oh, okay, Aquascape, you're a $40 million company, $50 million company, all these different things. Okay, you guys can do a $2 million project. But if you're a $1 million company, they're going to look at it and say, so this is going to take you 2 years? Right? You normally do $1 million a year and you want to do a $2 million project, they're like, this needs to be done in 3 months. No, it ain't going to work. But where we come in with the value is, talking to everybody about it this morning, I'm not even going to tackle all this stuff alone. I've worked with a lot of you on a lot of different projects around the world. We have an incredible team of people. So when we get these projects, we will invite in CACs because I don't want to be on a project for many, many months. It just kills you. Let's throw a bunch of people at it. Let's systematically get these things done. Do you have to have your processes and everything in place? Absolutely. Paperwork has to be filled out. Just all the red tape and garbage that comes with it, I hate. But thankfully, I don't do it. So thankfully, but we have people in the office that can do that stuff. But it's because of the scale of our company fits with the scale of these projects. So it's a little bit different. So it's talking about that overall game plan. And you know what? I did. I'm going right back to presenting, and it's not even asking any questions. So I think at this point, I'm going to have to just shut up. Shut up and listen. Yes, sir. Trent.
Can you touch on kind of our excitement for the CAD detail stuff with the group? I think that's interesting.
Oh, absolutely. Do you have any facts on it? I heard, you know, I heard there was a couple thousand downloads of it in the first month.
Yeah, the first month we had a couple thousand. Yeah, sorry, Greg. First month on CAD details. You guys know what CAD details is? Does everybody understand what it is? It's a website where we as a manufacturer can take technical drawings of our product, we put it on this website, and it's a free site for architects, landscape architects, all the people that we want to see the product and use the product, inspect the product. That's where this stuff is found. That's where the architects go. They pull this stuff for their drawings. And what Ed's talking about is they can track how many downloads we get as a company or from our pieces and parts. And the first month alone, we had over 2,000
Yep.
downloads.
Yeah, it was insane.
Different pieces. The second month, it actually grew to like 2,400 and something. So right now, there's over 4,000 hits in the first 2 months that we've been on CAD details. We've probably never impacted, or a good percentage of those people we've never touched, and we all in this room wanted to get in contact with those people.
Yeah, and all of those things are going to start hitting anywhere from now to 3 years from now. So it's filling that pipeline. So it's getting that information out. It's going to have our product, the name, the association with the certified contractors, all that stuff is plastered on this stuff, and it's going out into designs across the country. So I mean, this is powerful, powerful stuff. Andy.
Hey, how's that big project that you guys like posted over? Was it like the fall or the summer?
Which?
Like, you had a guy in the office that was like drawing it or something. Like it was like $5 million.
Oh, that was the tank.
Oh, yeah, that was the tanked one. Yeah, I don't know if Greg actually has more information. That was the what's the status on the project? Yeah, that was that big drawing that you saw, took a picture of, that the tanked guy out in Breckenridge, Colorado, or whatever the heck that was.
I like the status of most big projects.
Yeah.
always dragging on, always, you know,
Yeah.
it's a dream that never stops, right? So it just keeps going. Yeah. Not like it's starting this spring.
That's like, is that like an oil sheik or something like that? Wasn't that what it was? No?
Oh, it's an American dude.
Was it?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of a different project then.
So, Trent, is there a cover letter to the details that can be sent out with it? That's a standard cover letter that would go to architects, engineers, landscape
You know, I
architects?
don't know
No.
necessarily a cover letter, but we could sure try to create one.
Right.
Yeah, I think that would be brilliant.
Yeah, so
Absolutely, that's something that could go up on the tracking and be there for you guys to pull, customize, and shoot out. So
Absolutely.
right. Yeah,
Take a
so
blog on it.
so CAD Details right now, it's a website that architects and designers actually subscribe to. So it's a service, and they can come in and so a designer will say, I want information on a water feature. Aquascape will pop up with all the different products, and they say, oh, okay, I like these, and then they could drag and drop whatever components they want from those pieces. So you just basically type in whatever information. Thankfully, there's really not a lot of water feature stuff. The only water feature stuff I think on there was really like fountain stuff. It was like just fountain details, and we're like, well, that's not anything that we specialize in anyway. So the nice thing about it is we're kind of the only ones on there, which is great, which is why we got a bunch of hits right away. Questions? Yep.
So that
Tim.
the information they're pulling down, are the names or information about the people doing that, is that available?
That's a good question. Do we have access to the actual people that I don't
that I don't know. We'd have to
think
talk to Anthony about
we
that.
do? Yeah, because it's a third party that is kind of managing the whole thing. So it's a paid service. So we're paying to be a part of that. So you know, there's a dollar value associated with it. So we basically got the starting package. Just to get 50 products in there. We want to have hundreds of things on there, but we didn't know what type of hits, we didn't know what type of action we were going to get. So we can keep adding stuff to it, but we're going to have to increase our dollar amount going to them, and then they'll increase our package, and we could post more stuff. But I don't know if we have access to the people that are actually getting the information. You know, they kind of shelter that stuff. They don't want to turn it into, you know, a commercial type sales type of a thing. You know, it's where people are contacting people that are on the website. Yep.
Have you thought about creating models in SketchUp?
Have we thought about creating models on SketchUp? We have not. Yeah, we have not, and that's. It is something kind of along that the CAD details type thing. We're doing not necessarily overall drawings, but we are doing little bits and pieces, and this is the type of stuff that we're very curious in. So we're still in the infancy, you know, just because we haven't done that much stuff. We've done it locally with certain architects and designers. We haven't done it on a national scale as of this point, but we have to start somewhere, and that's where CAD Details is coming in for us. So we're going to track the information. We're going to see what it does for sales, and then from there we will start layering on other pieces as we see fit. But I think there's definitely room for growth there, you know, for sure, you know, without a doubt, without a doubt. Other questions? Yep.
Is CAD Details available to schools and learning institutions?
I would assume so, yeah. Yeah, anybody can sign up for it.
Anybody can sign up?
Anybody can sign up for it. Yeah, caddetails.com. Yeah, anybody can sign up for it.
There it is.
Yeah, you got it? Yeah, there it is. Yeah, so Tom just pulled it up. Yep.
Costs us money.
It costs us money to put our information on there. Yeah, exactly.
It has all your links to your YouTube.
Yeah, and it has, exactly. So we're cross-linked with YouTube, so it's just all about cross-marketing and all these different things. That's what we got to do. You know, I mean, it's taking all these different things into consideration, and that's how we're going to make a difference out there. More questions? Dustin, you had something? No. Questions? Steve?
It's more of a personal basis. You've
Yep.
been with Aquascape how many years?
I have been with Aquascape since 1993, so this will be my 22nd season.
And so you've seen a fair amount of change.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I've only been around 13 of those years, 14. It's a crazy tree. You seem to keep reinventing yourself.
Yep.
Over and over and over.
Right.
How does that happen? How do you keep doing that?
I don't even know. You know, it's thankfully, you know, give Greg his credit here this morning. He is a very unique individual in many, many ways. One of them being how he manages people. You know, I mean, he does a fantastic job of trying to push people outside their comfort zone and saying, you don't need to be doing this stuff anymore. Let's start going over here and trying to, and he's basically, it's a chess game. It's moving the people around and putting everybody in position so we could win the game. So he's like, you have a value over here. So my value right now is working side by side with Greg, working side by side with marketing, product development, and our local construction crew. Those are the main things that I'm dealing with. And the CAC program. So CAC program, marketing, getting information out there, doing social media, doing the blogs, gathering the data and the information, funneling that back through our tech department. So because I've been with the company a long time and had my hands in a lot of different things, I have a lot of different skill sets in different areas. I have created a great name for myself over the years, and that's because Greg has given me that platform. You know, he's like, go out there and you do it. It doesn't need to be me. You know, it doesn't need to be me as the owner. He's like, you're better suited for this stuff. He's better suited for other things. Brian is, Dave Kelly, Scott Rhodes. We all have our different places. But I'm kind of in a different place right now, which is kind of fun. You know, where I'm not out there on a daily basis designing and building.
I just yelled at Ed for not coming into the office.
He did. Yep.
Dude, you have to come into the office and people need to see you.
Yeah. But it sucks the life out of me. I know. But
who's enjoying Ed's blogs? So here's a guy, talk about reinventing yourself. How many years have I been telling you to do this? And now why don't you talk about your epiphany or your feelings after you do these things?
Sure.
I knew
You've been talking about it for years. He's been pushing me, which he does. And that's his job as the owner of the company. You know, this is where I see the need. You know, you have a different skill set, and this is where it needs to be used. So he finally talked me into doing a weekly blog. He's like, I don't care what it's going to take. He's like, you're going to do a weekly blog. And one of the days this week when I did stay home, I was working on this week's blog. So because I can get stuff done there. When I go into the office, yes, do I get a lot of stuff done and deal with a lot of other people in the company? Absolutely, but not getting certain things done. So when I need to get certain things done, I'll stay at home. Much more productive. But doing a blog, I actually thought I was going to hate it. You know, I'm like, geez, every week I'm going to have to sit my butt down. I'm going to have to come up with something. I'm going to have to write it. I have no shortage of information. You know, it's actually the exact opposite. The focus is trying to take all this information and come up with something that's usable. So what I'm really enjoying about it is it's making me focus on condensing information into a relatively short blog. Greg's he has a really good formula. He has a way where he could write it in a certain number of words, get his message across. He has his opening, the middle content, the strong close. He's got it down, but he's been doing it a lot longer. Mine, you see me, I start to ramble a little bit, and then I'll break blogs into two because I'm like, no, it's too long. No one's going to want to sit and read it this long, and maybe I got to split it into three now because I keep adding more and more stuff. But what I like about it is it's giving me the discipline to do it. But by writing your thoughts down on a weekly basis, it makes me a better presenter. It makes me a better speaker, better for doing sales, and it's because you can come up with a very well thought out, concise message quickly and efficiently, and it's because I've written it. So it's giving me that practice, and by writing that stuff down, it's like now, and I've always been a decent speaker and everything, but it's like it forces you to think a little bit differently. And then you come up with those same things that I wrote, and sometimes I can go verbatim from what I just wrote, and it's like, wow, that stuff, it really works. It really works. So I think it's very, very powerful, and I would recommend it if at all possible, if you had that discipline to do it, because I do think it's very, very important. And it's putting you out there as that expert, getting that information out there, having people look at that stuff and say, wow, these guys know what they're talking about. So Greg is, you know, more, he's more motivational type stuff, what he comes up with. I'm more real world, environmental messages, that type of a thing, you know, saving the earth type stuff, projects and things like that. But we all have our specialties. So I am enjoying it. So I do want to thank you for pushing me, you know, to get that stuff done, because now I'm finding myself, instead of writing one for a week, I have multiples done, just because you start rolling with stuff. Like, gosh, I could just keep going and going and going. So now I have a little backlog of different stories that I could use. But I mean, what better thing to do? I mean, just by putting all that information down, I mean, it's super, super valuable, and it'll be there forever. So we can go back and we can look up past ones people could find all this information. Otherwise, when I'm doing a presentation or a talk, I mean, there is so much stuff that we've talked about years ago that has been long forgotten that is still valuable information that people in this room would probably want to hear or see because you're relatively new. So now we'll be able to go back to that information and pull it up and say, oh yeah, here it is. Yeah, I remember doing that talk in 2003, and it was called The Magic of Projects that were $50,000 and less. That was a great presentation. Well, here it is. It's not lost in the archives. Our archives are kind of scary. I mean, we got so much stuff. You know, it's kind of like Indiana Jones. You remember that last scene in Indiana Jones when you're walking down those corridors and you just see all the boxes and all the stuff, just aisle after aisle after aisle. That's what our server looks like, you know, in the virtual world. We got so many pictures. We got so much information, so much data, so many customer information things and all this stuff. It's unbelievable. But now we have to go through and we have to start pulling those pieces out. And that's what a blog is. Going back and saying, oh yeah, that was a good one. Let's pull that out. Let's revitalize it. That's great information. It's still relevant today. Some of the stuff is going to be outdated. You know, Greg taking his book, throwing that away, that book is dead. But all the content inside of the book, there's valuable stuff there. Now that's coming back in a digital form. So yeah, it's really cool. I mean, we're at a neat place right now. Tom, what's up?
You've been with Greg a long time, and you've
Yep.
watched this thing grow from here to here.
Yep.
And I know we got a lot of employees in the room. What advice would you give employees about how to really latch on to the owner's dream?
Wow. Yeah, right. That's a good question. You know, I mean, everybody has got their, it has different personalities. Thankfully, you know, Greg and I could not be more different, but more alike. You know, we share that same passion for what we do, teaching people, but personality-wise, how we get the stuff done, completely opposite. If I was exactly like Greg, I wouldn't be here today. It would never have worked out, ever. You know, but it needs to be that little bit of a yin and yang. So Greg has always said, don't hire like yourself, even though you think you're the best out there. Hire somebody exactly opposite. You know, hire somebody that's going to complement you. So when I came on, I was his first full-time employee. You know, up until that time, he had part-time guys that came in and out, and so that was a stretch. You know, the company's growing, finding the right person, but
Pay him $9
$9 an hour, exactly. So, and yeah, I'm working on it. You know, so thankfully they are raising the minimum wage into Chicago to $10.50, so I'm going to be in good shape. So, but I went out. So I'll tell you a little bit of the story on how I got hooked up, and some of you may have heard it. So I was working as an environmental chemist at the time. I was trapped in a laboratory all day long. Very, very interesting job. I mean, I learned tons from our head lab manager and all that stuff. They wanted me to continue growing within the company. Their company was growing real, real fast. We dealt with hazardous waste. So we were a recycling facility. We took in waste from around the country, would come into our facility. We would take that waste product, we would blend it together in certain mixtures, and we would sell it off as secondary fuel. So it was a recycling facility, but we dealt with some pretty nasty stuff. So I was wearing, you know, full respirators and suits and all this stuff. So I mean, some pretty nasty chemicals. But I learned a lot from it, and I'm just like, you know, trying to picture my life. I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot see being here 10, 15, 20 years from now. I mean, what's my life going to look like? You know, I'm like, I couldn't see it. So talking with my wife, very, very smart woman that she is, she's like, you got to make your change. She's like, we're working fine. She's like, she's like, it's a great income, but you have to find something that's a little bit more exciting for you. Because I just felt myself kind of just going along with day-to-day life, and that's not a way to live. So I'm like, yeah, I got to do something. She's like, your background's in the sciences and biology. You're a water fanatic, and I was dealing with water. I was doing water quality testing and things like that, but she's like, you gotta find something. And she just happened to be reading local newspaper, which really not really around too much anymore, reading the local newspaper saying, Aquascape Designs is coming to the local Tinley Park library, and they're gonna do a talk on water gardens, backyard ponds. And she's like, you talked about this stuff in high school, doing backyard water features, but on a bigger scale. I was thinking retention ponds and fishing ponds and that type of stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, it's cool stuff. She's like, go out and listen to them and see what they have to say. Maybe you can get a connection. Who knows what's going to happen? I'm like, all right, I'll do it. So I went to the talk, and there was maybe a dozen people in the room. Greg was in college. His dad was doing the presentation and the talk. I sat in the back. It was all homeowners. They all had their own ponds already, and they were learning about these water gardens and how to make them better and all this stuff. And I just sat in the back, and I just kept shaking my head, going, man, this is cool stuff. And like, and it wasn't, it was an old slide projector, no PowerPoints. Gary's clicking through the slides, and some of them are upside down and sideways, and you're looking at them, you're like, oh yeah, it's kind of cool. And so we're looking at all this stuff. But what I think really struck me was the message, and that message is still exactly who we are today. It's work with Mother Nature, not against her. So as soon as I heard him saying that, I'm like, that's exactly has been my philosophy my entire life. I said, when I went to school, that's exactly what I studied. I understand this stuff. So I went up to Gary. I'm like, hey, I'm at Beaulieu, looking for a job right now. This is what I've been doing. I have construction experience, blah, blah, blah. Do you have any advice for me? And at the time, Greg and Gary were looking at doing a franchise system. So they were trying to sell themselves off as franchises. He's like, you could buy a franchise. He's like, we're looking into that stuff if you want to take it off on your own. They weren't really selling products and components, but it was more of a philosophy and a concept at the time. I'm like, I don't know if that's for me or not. Maybe. I'm like, who do I need to talk to learn more about your stuff? He's like, well, you got to talk to my son, Greg. All right, well, I'm like, where is he? He's in college right now. He'll be home soon. This was whatever it was, March or April. And sure enough, Greg comes home, and I kept pursuing it. I would call up on every couple days. I would call up Greg. No one had cell phones, so I'd call his office, and he would leave a message for him. And he was out in the field every single day. He was designing, building, and selling, and all this stuff. Super busy.
From our secretary was a dartboard, and I'd always see on the dartboard, Ed Beaulieu called. Guys, call me again, and I didn't want to hire him because he lived over an hour away. And I'm like, it's too far, but he kept calling and calling and calling.
So, and that goes to show perseverance, attitude, all those things that, Greg was talking about yesterday in his talk, but that was me. I'm like, I really want to do this job. I'm like, I think I have a lot of value that I could bring to this company. Brand new. I was talking to Gary and Greg, I remember at the very first Parade of Ponds where we met, and I remember talking to them about our construction business, my brother's construction business. So I have two older brothers. They had a small construction company. We were doing $1 million or so a year, small renovations, backyard decks, fences, remodeling, that type of stuff. We had a small crew, so I was a foreman on that stuff. So I remember talking to them. I'm like, I could run crews. I'm familiar. I have the biology experience. I have water experience. I've run construction crews. All these different pieces coming together. And I remember sitting down in the basement of his home over in Wheaton, and over in the background they had a picture of a scuba diver. It was actually Greg over by the pier in Bonaire. And I remember looking at that, and we're talking, and I keep glancing over at that. I'm like, wow, gosh, I've seen that picture before. I'm like, did you blow that up from like Skin Diver magazine or something and put it on there? And Gary's like, no. He's like, I took that picture. He's like, that's Greg. And he's like, that was on one of our dive excursions to Bonaire. I'm like, have I seen it before? He's like, yeah, we won. He's like, that photograph won a contest, which is a spectacular photograph. Gary and Greg, they did unbelievable stuff. And right then, I knew, I'm like, man, that's that common theme between us. I mean, just understanding. And then all of a sudden, instead of talking backyard ponds, again, this is all sales stuff. I mean, this is the same stuff that we've been talking about. As an employee, I'm a salesman. So it's like you have to understand, and you have to learn about the boss and learn what their likes are and their dislikes and how they operate. I mean, everything is sales. I mean, the stuff that you've been hearing from Steve and Doug and everybody else in here, life is a sales call. I mean, it's all how you interact with people, and it's how you set things up. So working with Greg, I knew immediately that was our common point. We talked for another hour about diving and snorkeling and trips and manatees and stingrays and all this cool stuff. And I'm like, wow, this is that company culture that he started before Aquascape was really there, before it was really anything. I mean, it was just a couple Hispanic guys. But it has to start somewhere. So Greg did a fantastic job of being that visionary. So I think the biggest thing is being that leader for everybody in this room, and casting that vision, I think, is super important. So getting your team on board. Having that, Greg's job is to guard the company culture. I mean, that's what he does. When he comes into the office, he wants cookies to be baking at 2 o'clock every day in the office. He wants the coffee to be going. So when people come in, they smell this stuff. But it starts with, he's got to paint that picture. And now it's up to us to fulfill all those different pieces and put all the different people together to make these things happen. Am I baking cookies? Hell no. It wouldn't smell the same. It would be bad, but we do have Courtney at the front desk. She loves doing it. She's a server. She loves to make people happy.
She replaced Juana.
And she replaced Juana,
First impression.
who replaced Missy. So I mean, we've had great people there, but it's always about finding, and every one, we think we found the best person for that position, and then you find someone better. And you think you find the best person for that, and then maybe they move somewhere else in the company. So when Ellen was in charge of HR, one of the biggest things that she did was, we have good people here. Maybe they're not in the right position, but let's shift this person from here over to here. Let's take Flavio from customer service and put him into product development. Let's take Dave Havrilka from over here and put him over here. He's got a better skill set. So it's manipulating people around. It's that chess game, figuring out how people are going to fit in. I mean, when you get an employee, again, that's that customer. I mean, that's like gold. I mean, when you find somebody that meshes with you, oh my gosh, talking with Becky last night and meeting the entire Turpin Landscape group, I mean, it's just exciting stuff. And you're finding the right people to make yourself grow and succeed for years and years to come. But it takes having that vision, putting things in place. Are there stumbling blocks? Of course. That's part of life. But having the right people that can deal with it. Greg yesterday was talking about his hardest things in life, and one of them was the roof collapse. And I don't think you said it yesterday, but when the roof actually came down, we lost great employees. People just walked out and said, we can't deal with it. And here's Greg saying, are you kidding me? This is my building. That's my dollar. This is my life. You're an employee here and you can't take it? See ya. Like that.
Yeah.
Right when we needed them most. So it's like, oh my gosh. And we thought these people were unbelievable. But until they're stressed, until you put them, until you really kind of put them into that tough position, you don't know what people are made of. Greg talking about football analogies, all that stuff. When you see people rise up, boom, keep feeding them. Keep feeding them more and more stuff. But as an employee, you have to understand that stuff, and you have to be that person that's not part of the problem, but part of the solution. Coming up and saying, oh, I got this. Heck yeah, Greg, you don't need to, I remember when he used to come out on every single construction job, and all I wanted to do was get him off of every single construction job. I'm like, dude, you got other stuff to do. Go ahead and do it. Run the rest of the company, get these things going. I can handle the construction stuff. Again, was it smooth? No, but it's all about those expectations. It's all about people rising up to the moment, finding myself and reinventing myself. I mean, that's the fun part. I mean, thank God, that I work for a company that is constantly changing. I've had people, family members, friends, customers, everybody coming up to me, Ed, why do you stick with Aquascape? Why are you still here? And how could you put up with all this stuff and all these changes? It's because I like it. If I did the same thing day in and day out, it's not for me. I love the changes. When Greg calls up and said, hey man, next week we're going to be, you got to go with me over to here. All right. My wife is in for it, and I'm like, yeah, no problem. We'll make it happen, of course. So I could thrive in that type of a situation. But you don't learn these things right out of the gate. It does take time to build those things. But thankfully, it's worked out, and it's been a heck of a journey. And we're still right at the very, very beginning of the journey. There's still so much stuff. It's just so exciting. That the opportunities out there, again, just like all the opportunities of ponds and things that are out there, but the opportunities for all of us to succeed is at an all-time high. My gosh, what a great time to be in business. Is it stressful? Of course, but the upside is huge.
That right now it's at
Oh,
I
unbelievable.
guarantee you that the people in the room feel this way, and many people who aren't in the room don't feel that way, and both of them are right.
So I got 5 minutes left, and once again, I'm finding myself scrambling for stuff here to talk about. So I'll stop talking about some of that stuff and try to answer a couple more questions. What do you got? I answered everything. Wow, that might be a first.
Where do you get the water to fill a water feature that you're talking about, the hospital?
Oh, the hospital's going to come. They're going to have to drill a separate well. Yeah, we'll have to drill a separate well. Yeah, just because of the volumes and everything. It'll be a completely separate well dedicated basically to that to the water feature. So that's at least the proposal as of this point. Yeah.
When's the last time you've been to the McCannon Farm or somebody take a look at that?
I was there right before the freeze came in. So which would have been November or something like that. Looks unbelievable. I mean, pond is spotless. No debris, no algae on the surface, no leaf debris. So this is what my blog is about this week and next week, talking about that specific project. But it's working flawlessly. But the amount of leaf debris that's coming out of there is truckloads. So what we did, so inside of that skimmer, so I came in with like a microgrid material, which is basically it's a reinforced polypropylene. It's like a screen. It's like got 1/4-inch holes in it, and we laid it inside of that intake bay. So in that area where all the pumps are at, so we got this 10 by 10 sheet, basically like a big net that goes in there. We got a couple of loopholes on the end, and every few days, well, during the fall, it was constantly. He would come in with his little mini backhoe, hook those 4 corners together, and lift out hundreds and hundreds of pounds of leaves and dump them in a pile, and then he'd put it back in. So the power of that stuff, again, think of our little skimmers on a little pond. Just blow it out, half-acre pond. All that debris is coming down. So traditionally, all of that leaf debris and all that matter was falling down into the bottom of the pond. It was decomposing, turning into compost. It was feeding the algae blooms. And stuff is breaking down, building up the sediment layers, the muck, hydrogen sulfide, the methane gases, all that garbage coming up from the bottom. So we're in the process right now of reversing that. And I don't know if I talked about it in this blog. Now I'm mixing things up or not. But when I think about a retention pond, I think about a workout program. I don't know if I've told this analogy to people or not, but I think about someone trying to get in shape. So you got a pond. Think of a pond, an old retention pond, as somebody that hasn't taken care of themselves. Older, overweight, out of shape. How do you start out? So you have a couple different options. So if you want to start out real quick and you have the money, you could actually go in and do liposuction. You could have surgery and remove all the excess weight and the fat. That doesn't mean you're going to be in good shape. It's just getting rid of the excess fat that's on you. That's like going into a pond and dredging it. You're actually pulling the debris out of there. So that debris is part of the cause, but not 100% of the cause. Once you get some of that stuff cleaned out, so at McCannon Farm, we took that pond, we went in with the backhoe, we pulled out, I don't even know how many cubic yards of sludge and muck and decomposing stuff, because it's been accumulating for 30 or 40 years in the bottom. So it's like, you know what? Let's do a little bit of that liposuction. Let's pull this out. But now, once we've gotten rid of a lot of that biomass, let's get it on an exercise program. So the first thing that you would do when you're going to go out and talk to somebody that has one of these, first thing you need to do is aerobic exercise. You need to get oxygen into it. It's going to get everything moving again. Put in an aerator. That's an aerobic system. Get an aerator system in there. That's the aerobic exercise. Not going to totally change everything, but it's going to start making a difference. The next thing you have to start to do is put on a skimmer system. The skimmer system is going to consume the leaf debris. It's going to remove it. So that's like increasing your metabolism. So that's like doing a little bit of weight training now. So now you're actually starting to consume some of those extra calories. Calories, nutrients, food, all these things are basically the same analogy. Does that make sense? So if you got food coming in, if it doesn't go anywhere, it's going to accumulate just like fat unless you burn it off. You have to have a mechanism to eat that stuff up. That's what wetland filters are. It's by removing the leaf debris before it goes in the bottom, that's going to help with the biological load. By putting in the wetland filter, that's going to start to oxidize and it's going to start to break down all those nutrients. That's the weight training. That's eating healthy. That's getting plenty of rest. So when you do all these things, you can take a system like this and turn it around. It's going to take time, though, just like an exercise program. What people traditionally have been doing with retention ponds is throwing chemicals at it. Chemicals are taking a vitamin. So someone that's out of shape and overweight, taking a vitamin isn't going to do squat. It's a waste of your money. Why are you doing it? But that's what chemicals are doing. It's treating the symptom, not the cause of the problem. It's treating the algae, it's killing it, it sinks to the bottom, but all it's doing is it's coming right back. So the guys that are in the chemical business, they love it because it's this wicked cycle. So they just keep saying, yep, throw more money at it, throw more money at it, and just keep throwing more and more chemicals at this stuff, but you're not getting rid of the problem. If you truly want to turn that pond around, you have to have the right system. You have to have the exercise program. You have to have the aerobic. You have to have the weight training. You have to have the skimmer, the wetland filters, all these different things. Is it going to turn it around in a year? No. I am seeing a big change in McCannon Farm in 2 months. The water clarity, unbelievable. The leaf debris that we're pulling out is not going to fall to the bottom and it's not going to decompose. That's limiting the load. The wetland filter is loaded with algae. That's exactly where I want it, because algae is actually, it's an aquatic plant, right? Algae is an amazing plant. It's the only plant that's found on every continent in the entire world. It'll grow on the bottom of the deep sea vents. It lives in Antarctica. It's going to live in the thermal pools of Yellowstone. I mean, it's an unbelievable plant, highly adaptable. But it sucks up nutrients and nitrogen and phosphorus and all this stuff. So it's actually good in a filter. It's perfect in the filter. Let it grow, let it choke that whole thing out, because then what you do is you come in and you clean out that filter. You've just pulled out X amount of pounds of nitrogen and phosphorus and all this stuff. I'm seeing the water clarity increase. Unbelievable. I mean, I was out there towards the end of right before everything froze over, and the water clarity was probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 feet down. So I'm seeing all the way down those slopes going in there. So he wants to swim in this pond again. So Ted, the owner, remembers when he was a little boy. He's 60-something years old. He's like, I remember being a little boy swimming in that pond. Well, he's going to be able to swim in it again. He's like, I haven't gone in there in years because it's a muck pit. But, boom, we're making these changes with this stuff. So it's just really, really cool stuff. So,
one more question.
yes. Oh, that's it. I thought you had one question, okay? Sure.
How are they using that whole system at the Buchanan Farm? How often does he turn on the big waterfall?
The big waterfall, he turns it on only kind of when he's during the viewing hours. It's only when he's kind of around. So the main waterfall, he keeps off. What he keeps running, the wetland filter has not been turned off. He turns the jets off and on. So when he sees debris and stuff in that one corner, turns the jets on and all that stuff, boom, just gets pushed right to the other side. He'll leave that running for a couple days and shut it down again. So he's very conscious about his electrical costs just because it's a nonprofit and we got a bunch of pumps in there. So he's pretty diligent about that type of stuff, but he's learning it. But the one thing I told him, like, do not shut off the wetland pump. So it's been running all winter long. He's like, Ed, he just called me, he texted me a couple days ago. He's like, I was just out there, the other day. He's like, man, this thing looks awesome. He had a huge fish kill on that pond 2 or 3 years ago because he didn't have aerators going. All that accumulated muck and sludge in the bottom was sucking oxygen out of the water. The pond froze over. Fish kill. And this is nature. This is what happens. It's thinning everything out because the carrying capacity of the pond has changed. There's too much biomass in there. Can't support all that life. All that life needs oxygen. So that's the aerobic type stuff. So I'm like, all right, well, so I sold them a aerator pump a couple of years ago. I'm like, keep that going in the winter, that'll help. But then we started talking. So again, this is how things happen. You guys have seen this 1,000 times. You're planting the seeds, listening to Andrew and Mike yesterday. We're planting seeds. I go out there, and I've known Ted for years, and my first thing was, selling him some aquatic plants for around the perimeter. Second thing was, let's sell him a small aerator so he doesn't have the fish kill. Now, he's seeing the changes. He's getting connected. He's coming to the office. He's being engaged. He's asking me questions. This is my in. I'm out there speaking in front of him saying, you got to do this. You got to do this. You got to do this. He's like, oh, I can't do it. Now the time is right. He's like, yep, Ed, let's come up with the overall plan. We want to start having weddings out here. I need to take this pond, and it's not just going to be this pond over in the background. I want it to be the focal point of the property. All right, now let's invest money in it. Now let's come up with a plan. So this is what you need. You need your skimmer over here. You need jets on this side, wetland filter over here, big waterfall over in the backdrop for that wow factor. He loves it, and he is telling everybody about it. This is our business. As soon as you make that one happy customer, it turns into 2. 2 turns into 3. It's just all these little things cumulatively working together, getting out there, getting the information out there, making an impact on people. My goal is to change people. So Ted right now is a huge proponent of Aquascape. The Lincoln Park Zoo loves us because we fix their problems. What are those problems? Can we solve their problems? Absolutely. Time and money. That's what it comes down to.
How much time
Yes, I have none actually, according to Becky.
How's the Lincoln Park Zoo looking, the big pond?
Oh, the big pond. So, I could. How much time do we have? All right, Lincoln Park Zoo. So we did have problems right before winter hit. So you remember how we had all that piping running through the bottom of the pond. We had that big 6-inch pipe. Everybody was sitting on it, trying to sink it and all this stuff. I did not want to do the 6-inch pipe in the bottom of the pond, but the Lincoln Park Zoo said it's too difficult. So their job was going to be to trench the pipe and help us put the pipe in. They said, Ed, we don't have the people, we don't have the time, we're going to cut through too much electric, trenching the pipe 300 feet from the skimmer all the way down to the waterfall. They're like, it's cost prohibitive. And so they came to me and said, could we run the pipe in the middle of the pond? I'm like, yeah, I suppose we could. So unfortunately, I signed off on it. We ran the pipe down in the bottom. It was a gasketed pipe, not a glued pipe. So it's an SDR 26 pipe. It's gasketed material. It can handle a huge abuse when it's buried in the ground. But when you lay a pipe down in the bottom, they shut the pump on and off on a daily basis to clean out the skimmer basket. We have a big skimmer basket in there, and they clean that thing out every single day. When they shut the pump off and on, there's a surge of water that goes through that piping. So this pipe that's laying unrestrained in the bottom of the pond would wiggle just a little bit. And eventually, it keeps wiggling, we would blow a joint apart. It happened 3 times. This past fall was the 3rd time. They're like, Ed, we cannot have this anymore because when this breaks, it stops our aeration, your wetland filter stopping down. We have to pull all the birds out by law to get you in there to fix it. And they're like, it's a big deal. And I'm like, well, it wasn't my idea to do the 6-inch pipe. Let's get that clear. And he's like, I know. And I'm like, well, we can go back to what I originally designed and do 3-inch pipe. And he's like, well, how much is that going to cost? I'm like, oh, it's going to be about 12 grand. And he's like, oh, shit, $12,000. I'm like, it is what it is. We laid 2,200 feet of 3-inch pipe in freezing conditions this past fall. So ice is building up on the perimeter. We abandoned the 6-inch pipe. We went in with six 3-inch pipes into the bottom of the pond.
Stick to the small jobs. Don't do the big jobs. Let that deal with all the problems.
Well, it's also sticking with the system. So we deviated from it. We deviated from that to try to save some money, but we ended up going right back to it and say, you know what, we really can't save the money. So now we have these 6 3-inch pipe running along the bottom of the pond. Everything's functioning fine. As soon as we turned it on, it was a spaghetti line of pipes floating across the water. As soon as we turned the pipe on, or the pump on, whoosh, they just dropped down to the bottom. They filled up with water. Everything is good. Water clarity is unbelievable. So actually, they were complaining to me because they could see stuff and debris down in the bottom of the pond. And I'm like, you wanted clear water, and now you're complaining because you see all the garbage down in the bottom. I'm like, I can't win. And he's like, no. He's like, we'll clean it up. He's like, you did your job. You know, the pond is looking awesome. Everybody loves it. Because of that, we actually have been invited out to a couple other zoos for flamingos and for some other animals and things like that. So it's been good stuff. That's it. Thank you.